The sound of Hippoware's bare feet echoed down the stone corridors of Pharaoh's palace. His quarters seemed further away that night. He was exhausted. Something had happened that day, and the whole household was full of activity, curiosity, and gossip. A man called Moses had come to Egypt and made a request of Pharaoh. The Hebrews were asking for leave to go into the wilderness to serve their God. Pharaoh had mocked Moses and the miraculous signs he had performed, and added that the Hebrews must have too much time on their hands. Hippoware had been scribe at the time. Afterwards, Pharaoh had everyone in the palace run off their feet, trying to prepare for anything. Now it was 4 a.m, so it seemed pointless for Hippoware to retire, though his bed looked inviting. Instead, he would record some events for himself and then prepare for the new day. He tried to recall what he'd heard about Moses. He was about to continue writing when he put down his ink-bone pen and went into the neighbouring bedchamber. His mentor, Jabari, a sage and fellow scribe, lay snoring behind a gauze canopy. Hippoware stood staring down at him and cleared his throat. Jabari snorted and opened one eye. He gasped and sat up. "Oh, it's only you. Has something happened?" Hippoware opened the canopy and held it aside. "No, Pharaoh sleeps. But you do not. Please excuse me. Do you know where the records are kept on this Moses?" "Oh," groaned Jabari. He fell back onto the bed and rubbed his forehead. "They're probably in the main historical files. I looked there yesterday afternoon, in between extensive lessons on dark enchantments." "What do you want to know?" Jabari rubbed his eyes. "Moses was a prince of Egypt who brought shame on himself." Jabari sat up, turned, and placed his feet on the floor. "He murdered one of the taskmasters who was beating a Hebrew brickmaker. Then he fled. Before that, he was a celebrated general, educated in the courts of Pharaoh, and he led a successful campaign into Ethiopia. Now he's just a shepherd of Midian." "How long ago did he go into exile?" 40 years hence, I believe." Jabari hunched over and leant against his knees. "You don't believe what he said, do you?" Hippoware gazed at the tiled floor where he had sometimes seen the odd scorpion. "Part of my studies led me to research a vizier of the past, another Hebrew called Joseph." "Oh, you found that. We're not very interested in him." "Isn't it true that he predicted that one day during their slavery that God would overthrow Pharaoh?" "That's the palace gossip. And yes, he said something of the sort." "Well?" "Well, what? It will never happen. Besides, I can't do anything to save Egypt, and neither can you. So go to bed for another hour." "But behold, our Pharaoh is more political than spiritual, and he will not heed the warning, so go and rest." In an Egyptian household, a Hebrew mother and her teenage daughter worked as domestic slaves. They were grinding grain for the day's bread. They each knelt before a saddle quern, working a roller back and forth over the grain. "Save your breath for grinding," advised Menachah, as her daughter was asking a lot of questions. "We're nearly finished." "But it's so thrilling. Wasn't Moses a great man once?" asked Seneb-Tsisi. "Well, he still is. It seems he's been called to aggravate Pharaoh on behalf of the slaves." "Who would know more?" "Ask around at the midday meal." "Don't you care?" Menachah sat up straight and arched her back. "My back aches." "This flour is fine enough. I'm taking it to the kitchen." She began scooping the flour into a jar. Seneb-Tsisi watched her. "Finish yours," instructed Menachah. But Seneb-Tsisi only sat staring at her mother. Menachah leaned closer to her. Moses' adoptive mother was Pharaoh Hatshepsut, daughter of the previous Pharaoh. You were only 5 when she died. Moses' real mother set him in the Nile in a basket, hoping to save him. A voice called out, "Is the flour coming soon? The oven is hot and we've started baking already." "Yes," called Seneptisi. "But you're not finished," said Menachah. "It's all right." Her mother exhaled heavily and quickly rolled the grinder over the grainy flour. She said, "Moses was born 80 years ago during the slaughter of baby Hebrew boys. Hatshepsut thought the Nile god had provided him for her. Miriam and Aaron are his real siblings." "Who?" "You know of them. 5th row of houses in brickmaking. They're Levites." "Oh, not sure." They carried their jars of flour into the kitchen. Seneptisi had one last question. What made Pharaoh slaughter the babies? Because several 100,000 Hebrew slaves could form their own army and overthrow the whole country.